Hey, I'm Matt Valley. Welcome to episode number 118 of the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the research and insights pros that you trust. Now, hey, I am super excited to welcome Ian Pierpoint to the podcast today. Now, Ian is from Montreal, Canada, Quebec, which is a dead giveaway when you hear his accent, for sure. But Ian is Ian is the founder and CEO of a company called Further&Further Strategies, which is really perhaps the most unique and one of the coolest research companies I think that's out there right now, focused primarily on qualitative, going really, really deep. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. By the way, he also has really cool merch like this Bones culture zine, right? Call it a culture zine, kind of like a fanzine music, like old skateboarding zines. With some really, really cool and insightful stories. I think you can reach out to Ian to get on the mailing list for that. Is that right?
Can indeed. Get a free copy.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, physical media. I just absolutely love it. So cool stuff. Now, I have to say, just thinking about Ian's career to this point, like how he got started, this crazy non-traditional path to where he is today, and all of these really fascinating things he's done in between. I look at his career and I think, oh my God, I totally blew it. I wish I could rewind. Man,
oh I'm not sure.
I wish I could rewind the clock, honestly, and have more guts and just have more, like, trust myself more and follow my heart and do some of these really cool things, because it's really awesome stuff. So we're going to talk about all that and more on today's podcast. So welcome, Ian.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, super happy to have you. Now, I have to say, for recent viewers of the podcast, I have been taking this mental performance shot right there called Magic Mind. It's working for me. It's really good. Probably work for you too. So if you're looking for a little boost of energy, a little mental pick-me-up, if you are perhaps trying to run for president, want to make a good showing,
I need a bigger serving.
That's right. So anyway, it's magicmind.com/rock and roll, code rock and roll 20. We'll get you a nice discount. I'm going to go down the hatch with this. Ready to roll. All right. Okay, Ian, let's go all the way back to the beginning. How did you first get into this insight space? I know it's just an awesome story.
Sorry, that's my wife trying to call me.
Too bad.
Sorry, I'm going to try and turn that off. It's so annoying how it goes through. You have to edit this bit out. You okay if I just message her quickly and say, don't call me?
That's fine.
Yeah. All right. So I am 53 years old. So going all the way back to the start of my career is gonna sort of banjax your 45-minute limit. So I'm gonna be brief, but I'll talk about how I've ended up sort of falling into research. Like most people who get into this industry, you don't really know what it is, and then you sort of stumble and find out it's really fucking cool. It can be really fucking cool. Some can be really fucking boring as well, but like most. But I was back in 1989. I sort of fell in love with and sort of dived into this movement called acid house or Balearic beat or whatever you want to call it. It's the birth of PM essentially. So, but back then it was super interesting and cool and authentic and a mix of like
completely new. Right.
Completely new. It's like a mix of yacht rock and Detroit techno and Chicago house and fueled by a new safe drug, which we now know as ecstasy. But back then it was, again, drugs were better. So I kind of fell in love with that thing and ended up sort of spending most of my time, instead of going to school, going to clubs when I was like 17, 18. And that was the time you're supposed to apply to go to university, but I was too busy doing that. So I didn't bother filling in the forms, and had a club night called Wildlife on One that I was doing once a month that made me enough money to live with a bit of other stuff, bit of catering work.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great days. Long summers, dancing, never having a hangover. Life was brilliant. But my mum was less pleased with this version of me and was like, you're not, I don't want this long-haired idiot in the house all the time. I want you to get a job or go to university. And I'm like, well, I get a job. So she signed me up for some government agency that just sort of pumps jobs to 18-year-olds who are looking for them, which is a beautiful idea and doesn't exist anymore. But I got a series of marketing and advertising jobs sent my way, and I applied for a bunch of them. I got two. One was a trainee jingle writer for Capital Radio, which I kind of wish I'd done, to be honest, but it was £4,000 a year, which wasn't a lot.
£4,000 a year.
£4,000 a year. That was
That's hard to live on.
Hard to live on.
Even.
I mean, not a lot, right? But I got another job with London Transport, which is the Tube, and it was £8,000 a year, a free tube pass, and they sent you to university 2 days a week, so you can get some sort of marketing or advertising qualification.
No brainer.
No brainer. So I went and did that, and was doing that from like 1989 to 1991, moving around different departments, and eventually they're like, you got to get a permanent job, otherwise you're kicked out. And the only permanent job that was available was market research assistant. So I was like, market research, and I got the job.
Wow.
And I stayed there for about 5 years. I kind of really enjoyed it. It was quite nice to be in that sort of public sort of service space at that time. Wasn't too hard. Yeah, and it was, I was having a good time. Didn't really go to university for those 2 days. I just went clubbing and stayed in bed. So it's basically a 3-day-a-week job. So after that, I went to work at Nestle as a researcher, and eventually kind of had this role that was sort of an youth innovation thing, because I was very connected to youth culture back then. Now. And during the process of doing that job, I got to see lots of focus groups, and I got to work with some really interesting youth-focused agencies.
Sure.
So then went and worked for a youth research agency called Informer, became their director, head of research. Did that for a bit. And then I started my own thing within a bigger company. I wrote a business plan and pitched it around to ad agencies and whatnot in London. Managed to get someone to give me some money to start an agency called Vegas, which sounds a lot better in the UK than it does in America. The company I was then running that's parent company got bought. I then got made the head of youth for Synovate, which was basically now Ipsos. So I was the head of youth for Ipsos Synovate. Didn't enjoy that very much. Did that for 3 or 4 years. Then I decided to start an agency called The Sound. So and the idea behind The Sound was just trying to make research more human and more creative in the way that we tell stories. And we started to kind of hire designers to make things a bit more beautiful and engaging when you deliver it. Long before I was just doing stuff like that, infographics and things. We had a film team, so we were making documentaries. Did that for 10 or 11 years. Basically completely fell out of love with research. What I realized was I actually quite like doing research rather than running research companies. And I'm not very good at that, I don't think. Or I don't feel like maybe it's the imposter syndrome. You're like, I'm out of my comfort zone here. Very comfortable when I'm doing research and telling stories and finding some opportunities and stuff. So I completely fell out of love with it, and I was like, I'm gonna, all came to a head, and I left and sold my shares and found myself with a heavily pregnant second wife, but divorced from the first wife. I'm not a bigamist. It's not. I wasn't like
okay.
wasn't like multiple wives. So got divorced, and we got a baby on the way, and I'm like, I've got to find something to do. And Herschel, the backpack company, came on and offered me the job as CMO. So I went and became CMO there, and that was super interesting for a whole bunch of reasons. But the reason I think that it's relevant to where I am today is I started, as a result of being there, we started making proper professional content. So I've spent most of my career in research and innovation and strategy. Now I'm creating content, but what I'm seeing is the way that professional documentary filmmakers spend time with people, carefully cast, look for people who are a little bit more on the fringe, people who are more conscious of the decisions they've made, and then they spend time with them and build trust and start to see the layers of that story. So I remember sitting at Herschel and thinking, now what if I could take, it's essentially ethnography. What if I could take that really immersive approach and apply that to commercial research? It would mean I'm only doing projects that I'm really interested in, because it's always at the start of a process. It's always the foundational piece. It's always the big question. It's not like testing other people's ideas. It's coming up with your own ideas, making sense of big issues. If I could do it that way, but I could also do it in a way where I get to spend real time with people, they get to know me, and I don't feel lonely. Being a researcher can make you feel very lonely. The loneliest job in the world, apparently, is people who work on toll booths on highways and stuff, because you meet loads of people, but no
Yeah,
one wants to fucking see you, and it's a
right.
completely transactional experience. The loneliest job in the world, apparently. That's, I think being a researcher could be a bit like that, because people
Yeah,
don't want you in their house at 7 o'clock. They don't really want to be in a focus group. But they do if you position it in a different way and you get to know them and they trust you and they're enjoying it and they're starting to see the value of it and
yeah,
getting something from it themselves. So that's when I started Further and Further is all about doing immersive ethnographic research, exploring big issues, and always at the start of stuff. So we get really interesting projects. So yeah, my journey has gone from jumping around in nightclubs with a diverse group of people, which actually genuinely inspired me to do this, I think. Looking back on it, now it makes more sense, to doing what we do today.
yeah, it's fascinating. I just love that notion of, hey, the first day you're not going to get really deep insights because they're not connected enough with you. They don't trust you enough. But when they spend a lot of time with you, then they truly open up. And I suppose that you've had lots of maybe participants that by the end of it, they're really sad to see you go, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're
So
friends. We're friends with lots of them. Like
yeah,
we'll often go to different cities and hang out with them now because we've spent 2 or 3 weeks with them having some really profound conversations. And we're not therapists, but they're like, they come out at the end of it, some of them going, that really helped me sort of unpack parts of my life. But yeah, I mean, it's a different experience. There's so many. Every single person I meet, it will tell me. I mean, what they're telling you in the first meeting is not a lie. It's just they're trying to please you. They're trying to
yeah,
understand what you want to hear. They're also very guarded about some stuff. They're maybe a bit suspicious about what you're going to do with this information. So
right.
they're not going to open up, or they don't even know really what you're going to find interesting. So a lot of the time, you'll be 3 interviews in and you're hanging out with their friends and they say something, you'll be like, oh, that's the thing I was really interested in. That's revealed more than anything. But you didn't reveal it because you didn't know it was part of the story that I'm trying to uncover.
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, it's night and day. It's like we take much more time with people, and it's easier to write the report and then create the documentary, because you're not looking for the signal and the noise anymore, because it just disappears as you've got to know them. I always think of it
right. Yeah,
going on dates, right? You go on a date with someone, the first date, if you said to me what, like after 6 or 7 dates, that
yeah,
first person is not the person that you're with. And it
right.
can be in a good or a bad way in a dating situation.
Right. And I love the connection with like the documentary filmmaking. I've seen some of your work and it's absolute pro level, right?
Thank
Um,
you.
and it feels like if you didn't do that, if you try to produce the insights in some sort of PowerPoint, I mean, you're missing everything from those deep conversations and experiences that you have with these participants. Cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of the problem with research documentaries is the purpose of them, which I think is the wrong purpose, is just to enforce what's in the deck. So you can't question what's in the deck. So it's just a series of points proving, like writing a quote into a deck. It's that, but in film. What we
Right.
do is we narrow it down to 3 stories, and we want the watcher, the viewer, to feel a sense of empathy, to feel like they need to do something with this shit rather than
Yeah.
just go, whatever. And it makes the whole thing much more powerful. So it's not about proving what's in the deck. It's making you do something with it because you care.
Right, right. Now I have to ask, so you're talking about your days as an acid house DJ and I guess attendee as well, but uh
More attendee, I would say. I'm not gonna,
more
I'm not gonna
attendee,
claim.
but you did have you did your turn at the decks, right? So you put together this documentary called the Acid House Experience, right?
Yeah.
Which is just a fascinating watch. It's people from back in the day.
Mm.
Um, what are they doing now? And a whole lot of them are still doing club dates and spinning records, and they still have followings. And it's amazing to be like in your 50s or even 60s and still have thousands of people coming to see you spin records. So the question to you is,
Mhm.
Do you ever get that urge to get out there and get back in front of the
Yeah.
crowd, spin some records?
Well, I mean, I would never class myself as a DJ. I have DJ'd and put on parties. So I'm not going to do that in case any of my friends see this and go like, "You fuck off." It's like, come on. But so I mean, yeah, the short answer is yes, because it's there's nothing. Actually, I don't think of anything. I can't think of anything better than having people dancing and enjoying something and sort of being taken to a different place by what you're doing. And on the rare occasions that I played at a club and that's felt like that's sort of happening,
Yeah,
uh, it's kind of magic. I mean, so but my way of getting back into it, me and my friends, it was in the film actually. The radio show we set up, Rude Transmissions. So that carried on for about 2 or 3 years, and we had great fun doing that, doing sort of live mixes and pre-recorded mixes on digital radio before everyone started doing it. Now there's so many you can't cut through. But for 3 years, we had this really nice community of people who listened to us every Friday. We had to start doing it every other Friday because we get too fucked up and we're too old. And then it became monthly because we couldn't even
yeah,
cope with it for the week. So, but that was great because like you'll play a mix and I'll be like getting on a plane somewhere on a Friday lunchtime because it's played at evening in London, and
yeah.
loads of people enjoying it. They're posting pictures and dancing, and I thought that was as close to that feeling that we got. And I did that with some really good old mates of mine, so it was really nice to do.
Yeah, cool, cool. Let me ask you one other thing because there's something just kind of fascinating because you're talking about, you got that job working with the tube, and then you started at Nestle, and then you became sort of this expert on youth culture. There's something similar going on now where everyone's trying to understand millennials or whatever. Every company out there is like, oh, what are millennials all about? So they go rush into the millennial employees that are in the office and say, oh, what are millennials like, right? Um, some of them are like more than happy to say, oh, it's like this. And some are like, hey, you know what? I just started here. I don't know anything yet. So they don't have that confidence like in their
Hmm.
perspective or their point of view. It sounds like you were more the former, like, hey, this is the way it is, right? Do you attribute that to anything?
To be honest, like I just wanted to wear jeans to work. That was my aspiration. Like
Yeah.
was nothing more than that. I started work before well, just as casual Fridays kicked in. Now everyone wears whatever they want. But I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going out to clubs and I'm spending time with all kinds of really interesting creative people.
Yeah.
I've got a job that's not really in that space. But I thought to myself, how can I take what I know about life and make my job a bit closer to who I think I am or who I want to be? And a big
Yeah.
part of that was, well, I just want to come to work as myself.
Right.
So, and what I realized, even at a company like Nestle, which back then was much more corporate than it is now, it's much more,
Very much so. Yeah.
but that they were like, oh, interesting. So the more I did it, the more successful I became.
Yeah.
The more I talked about people doing drugs and the kind of clubs that were going on and how that was shaping the way that young people were living their lives, wanted to live their lives, the more people kind of respected me. And I was like, okay, so if I can do this in Nestle, then there's probably places where lots of people are doing this. And
Yeah.
people are going to probably pay us quite a lot of money because we sort of seem to understand a movement that's changing the world and we're part of it. And I also have got some marketing language and a bit of understanding about how brands work and how to
Right.
unpack people's behaviors and motivations. So I just kind of aligned the two. So I kind of did a degree in acid house accidentally and aligned that with some research experience, and that allowed me to create a world for myself that I really enjoyed. But I think that was it. The more I turned up for work in jeans and talked about people getting fucked up at parties, the more like people like my manager and people are like, oh, that's really interesting. What does this mean for coffee? So that's what I
Yeah.
learned. The more you're yourself, I think the more successful you tend to be in life, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you're here for figuring out that lesson real early. So,
Completely random, utterly random, nothing to do with it.
all right. So when you're talking about your career development, and you mentioned sound, and at the company sound that you founded, um, you started to get into documentary filmmaking and that sort of thing back then. And it strikes me like back at that time, people were just starting to grumble about PowerPoint, right? So you're way, way ahead of what other people were talking about at the
Yeah,
time.
at that time, yeah.
And that's always kind of been the case. So I'm curious to know from your perspective, as you look at the future of research now, what do you see?
Oh, I think we're at a very strange point. So maybe I'll start with what I hope rather than what I see.
Yeah,
What I hope is that the emergence, introduction, adoption of AI does not replace all human-focused research. I sort of despair a little bit around when people talk about synthetic respondents and never having to do face-to-face work with real humans again because it's cheaper and faster to create these virtual human beings who can answer all of your questions. That kind of terrifies me. I think I see AI, and I'm saying this as not someone who's an expert in any shape, way, or form on it, but my gut tells me it's about a race to the average and using the rearview mirror to get there. It assumes, I think,
yeah,
that more of life is online than people like to admit, and the person you present yourself online is very different. Obviously, it's the person you are in real life. The things you'd say and do and pretend to
yeah,
be are totally different. And I think AI gets a lot of it. Obviously, gets a lot of the data from that. What I think is going to happen is more and more is going to go there. I think marketers love shiny new objects, and tech always sucks all the energy out of the room. So what I think is happening right now is that everyone's adopting this new technology to try and find out if it works and if it's going to deliver answers and growth without the spend. What I suspect is going to happen is it will fail in certain ways, and there will be some probably very bad fuck ups with it.
right.
And I'm hoping that the way the industry goes is like, okay, well, we've got all of this AI stuff. This is great, but we've got to make sure that we're still doing immersive, human focused stuff. So I'm hoping that people will double down on the things that we do. Otherwise, I'm going to have to become an Uber driver or something. I don't know.
Right.
I've thought about it. I'm hoping that continues to be the case where people understand that we've got to go and talk to people and get underneath the hood and do it in a better, smarter, more immersive, more creative, more inspiring way. But I think it's probably going to be a bit more AI-ish than I would like. That's what I think, which I don't like. I
Yeah,
don't believe. I don't. The word synthetic respondent, really like makes my teeth itchy.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just,
That's.
just, yeah. Anyway, I could bore you about that for a while.
I've been digging into that topic quite a bit lately. I'm not entirely sure how to feel about it yet, so I'm still stewing on a few angles of it. So interesting.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it, but I was talking about it the other day with a friend of mine. I'm like, so you create these like AI people. Do they then live virtual lives? Do they get divorced? Do they get a drink problem? Do they change
Yeah,
team allegiance? Do they lose friends? I'm like, there's all that stuff going on in some sort of random virtual world where just like real life, or are they just a two-dimensional being that they've created that nothing bad ever happens to? I don't know.
right.
I've got no idea.
Like fit for purpose, like the statistical
Yeah.
concept of
Yeah,
data, right? So
yeah.
are you fill in missing data? I'm not entirely sure. It's not my bailiwick, but
No,
it's very
no,
interesting.
I'm going to SMR, presenting at the SMR conference in Athens, and we're presenting a paper and a short film about being uncomfortable. And it's basically about how most research sort of filters out uncomfortable human stories because they don't want to speak to someone who's depressed or going through addiction issues. They don't, and if they do end up speaking to them, they don't really want to hear the stories. And if the stories that then come out are really heavy, they try and turn them into opportunities in the debrief. That
Right.
marketing is a different world. They're not comfortable with uncomfortable stories. And I think one of the big fuck ups of AI is programmed not to accept uncomfortable stories. So all of that, we
Yeah.
know that there's a whole bunch of racist people out there. We know there's a whole bunch of homophobic people out there, transphobic, people with extreme views, people who've done terrible things and believe in terrible things. Their stories, their perspective, whether you
Stand
want
a
to hear that
test.
perspective or not, will be filtered out by AI. You can't even ask those questions of AI. So it's taking out all the nasty elements and making marketing feel even more like a fake world to me.
Ah, yeah, that's fascinating. really fascinating. And you mentioned that, so it makes me think again of your zine here, where what's interesting about it is you've got all of these cultural touch points or trends, right? But then the human stories that underlie these things. And in some cases, you might think, oh, this is going to be a very depressing read.
Mm.
But you find that it's not, because they're immersed in this life and they found their ways to deal with whatever they're dealing with. And they're actually generally happy, or just some really surprising things, because the stories are very real and honest. And
Yeah.
so it's super insightful. So with that said, I'm really curious to know what media you turn uh, to sort of fill your brain and understand what the trends or the perspectives should be, or are.
Mm.
Not should be, but are.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of strange answers to this, really, I suppose. I mean, I like everyone else. I listen to lots of podcasts. I'm a voracious reader of the news. I buy a lot of books, which I then tend not to read all of. I skim and go back and forth with them, which worries me. I think I've got this sort of ADHD mind that can't get through a book, which really is bothering me in this point of my life. So I don't think I have any sort of anything particularly unique, but I think as a researcher, you get to meet so many interesting people. And I think speaking to real people about life, and we're lucky enough to talk to them about things like politics and being a parent and getting divorced and all this stuff about real life. I think I think that probably informs where we come from more than anything we read in the media or anything we listen to.
Yeah.
Um, and I try and throw myself into stuff in life that is a bit odd. I like to be uncomfortable. Coming back to the talk we're doing. So I mean, for example, I took half the company on a Bigfoot expedition last year, which was one of the most amazing, bizarre things I've ever done in my life. So we went and spent 4 days in the woods with a bunch of Bigfoot hunters who are,
Bigfoot.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Like we
awesome.
turn up and we're like a bunch of like, you know, aging hipsters from Brooklyn and stuff. And when,
Yeah.
and shit. And these guys are almost and they are guys, mostly guys. It's like two women, mostly white males, quite right wing. They got T-shirts on that say things like, "If you don't believe in Bigfoot, but you do believe Biden got 78,000 votes, then you're a fucking idiot." You know, they got stuff like that on, all flying American flags. They got like arms to the teeth with guns, and we had the best time with them. We spent 3 days with them. Hanging out in the woods at midnight with glow sticks, trying to bring in Bigfoot. We got talking to them about their lives. They started talking to us about, stuff that they were maybe not talking about with other people. So I love that. I love doing stuff like that. And I probably, if I look back on that and think, probably learned more from that than the 300 articles I read in the New York Times last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, we did not find Bigfoot, unfortunately.
you didn't. You didn't. That's
Oh, unbelievably, right?
wow. I'm shocked. Well, it was just the wrong trip. Next time.
There's always another time, right? I feel like I could spend every week for most of my life still trying to find.
All right, cool. Well, it is a rock and roll research podcast. So there's this music component to it, right? So we talked a little bit about acid house and all that good stuff. But this is the real important question, Ian, and it's the toughest one of all. So let's say you're stranded on a desert island, right? Maybe you've got some ecstasy with you. I hope so, perhaps.
That's 53 at kill me at this point. So
yeah, maybe not.
I've got a nice cup of tea. With me.
A cup of tea. All right, you got a cup of tea.
And some biscuits. Yeah.
And what you have is your choice of 3 records, albums, or maybe just records of your choosing to keep you company for the rest of your days. What are those 3?
Yeah, you're right. You gave me this question before, and it's the only one I've spent 2 weeks thinking about. Sorry about that. You can probably tell by the answers to the other questions. So I think I'm going to go with, and I can't think which one, but something from the National. I need some sad dad album.
Interesting.
I need a sad dad moment just to kind of
National from Cincinnati. I used to live in Cincinnati.
I think my favorite band of today. So I couldn't pick which one. So if you can force me, I'll go Boxer. I'll think of the Boxer.
Okay.
I could take any one of the National albums and
awesome.
So that's my sad dad, because I've got 4 kids and I would be a sad dad.
Sad dad.
That's why I'm taking that one. I'm going to take Screamadelica by Primal Scream.
Interesting.
Produced by the spectacular Andrew Weatherall, who unfortunately died a few years ago, who I think probably, if I could have met any hero, he would have been it. Just a spectacular human being. The phrase he adopted, "Fail we may, sail we must," is something that we're Further and Further say quite a lot. Genuine creative genius, never compromised, and did his own thing, and is lauded as a legend today. So I'll take that. And the final one is a shout out to one of my best mates, Bill, who has a band called Astro Color. And I do actually listen to this an awful lot. They did a brilliant album called Paradise, which fits with the island. It's kind of a concept album of a couple going on vacation, kind of jazz funk thing. And I really like it. I listen to it all the time. And he came around my house the other day and it was on the turntable and he's like, "You just put it on there, aren't you?" I'm like, "No, I genuinely randomly listened to that last night." So that's one of my favorite records. So I'd take Paradise by Astro Color, and that would be my island soundtrack.
I love it. If you have a link, definitely send it along. I will
send it. It's good. It's good. It's good.
Yeah, would love to hear that. All right, super cool. Hey, Ian, this has been just an awesome conversation. I'm super happy to have met you. I just love your story. Definitely looking forward to running into you in person at some time. Sit down and chat some more about all this good stuff. In the meantime, I think people can connect with you, right, to get this. They don't have to be a client. They could just be something, right?
They just have to be a nice human being.
Nice human being. You can get this really cool zine, super insightful. So that's great. But hey, let's talk soon, Ian. Rock and roll.
Thanks, man.